Chapter 8 Historical Researcher. Number of researchers. There is a consensus that historical research has much to contribute to library and information science. Nature and value of historical research. Historical research can still be defined as a scholarly attempt to discover what has happened. Basic purpose of historical research are to provide a clear perspective of the present and to facilitate planning for the future by identifying general principles applicable to recurring situations. Chronology. Chronology can be defined as simply the describing of events in the order of their occurrence, as similar to the older concept of historical research. Importance of historical research to librarianship. Historical research can make specific contribution of the advancement of library and information science. Historical research can contribute to the body of knowledge about librarianship. A knowledge of history and an understanding of historical methodology are indispensable elements in the education of library and information professionals. Provide a necessary perspective for understanding the principles and practices of library and information science. Type of historical research. Huawei identifies 6 different types of historical research or documentary study. 1. Biographical research. 2. Histories of institution and organization. 3. Tie investigation of sources and influences. 4. Editing and translating historical documents. 5. Studying the historical of ideas. 6. Compiling bibliographies. Sources of the historical information. The data gathered in historical research can come from a wide variety of sources. Among the more commonly used are the following. 1. Official records, such as deeds, annual reports of organizations, charters, and so on. 2. Newspaper and other periodicals. 3. Eyewitness accounts of events. 4. Archives. 5. Manuscripts. 6. Letters and personal diaries. 7. Biographies, autobiographies, and memories. 8. Historical studies. 9. Literary writings. 10. Oral evidence. 11. Memorials. 12. Catalogs. 13. Schedules, agendas, and so on. 14. Archaeological and geological remains. Non-documents. Evaluating of historical sources. In selecting specific sources of data for historical study, the researcher should want to know if the sources are relevant, if the study substantial enough to be worthwhile and competent. External criticism. External criticism or gathering of external evidence is done to determine if a source provides authentic primary data. External criticism may be used interchangeably with textual criticism and usually takes into account the provenance or origin of a document. Internal criticism. Internal criticism is generally more challenging than external criticism, and it too is often difficult if not impossible to achieve with absolutely certainty. Basic step of historical research. Historical study should be guided by a formal hypothesis. In other words, historical research tends to involve the following steps. 1. Identification of a problem of historical significance. 2. Collection of background information. Literature review of the secondary sources. 3. Formulation of a hypothesis when possible. More on this later. 4. Gathering of evidence or data including verification of the authenticity of the primary sources and the validity and reliability of their contents. 5. Organization and analysis of the pertinent data, more often qualitative than qualitative. 6. Interpretation of the finding or the drawing of conclusions. The hypothesis in historical research. Generally speaking, the use of a hypothesis in historical research helps to increase the objectivity of the study and minimize researcher bias. Collecting data. The data collection technique for historical research. In fact, one of the great challenges facing the historian is the extent to which his or her research relies on unpublished materials. The presentation of findings. The report is normally directed to the knowledge scholar, and the facts and interpretations should be presented so that the reader can evaluate conclusion in light of document evidence. Library history. Historical research conducted in library and information science has often been referred to as library history. As to the future of library history, there continues to be a need for more historical research that considers libraries and other information systems in broad context. Biographical research. Bibliographical research does not represent true research, at least as prescribed by the scientific method or inquiry. Systematic bibliography. Persons involved in the compilations of systematic or enumerative bibliographies are concerned with the book and other materials as an intellectual entity. Descriptive bibliography. Bibliography is the study of books as tangible objects and, starting from this fact, it is concerned with the relation of one book to another. This process can be broken down into more specific bibliographical research, including the following. 1. Analytical bibliography, which is concerned with the physical description. 2. Textual bibliography, which focuses on certain textual variations. 3. Historical bibliography, which deals with the identification. Problems in historical research. A variety of problems are common to most types of research, but tend to be particularly important in historical research, including the following. 1. Deciding how much data are enough. 2. Improperly selecting data. 3. Relying too heavily on secondary sources of information. 4. Investigating an overly broad problem. 5. Failing to evaluate adequately the historical data and their sources. 6. Failing to internet the data. 7. Reading the present into the past. Summary. Through the methods of historical investigation, this may be the case because historical research is ex post fact in nature. It is important for the researcher to draw upon primary rather than secondary sources as much as possible.